Hey everybody, welcome to episode 17 of the FAFO Academy Podcast. I'm your host, Gemma, and here with me today I have Steve Maxwell. Today's podcast is about leadership under pressure, and that's going to be viewed through Steve's law enforcement and military experience and background. So Steve, welcome to the show. Go ahead and tell everybody about yourself.
Well, I appreciate the time, Alex. And again, my name is Steve Maxwell. I'm a resident here in Spotsylvania County, Virginia. I love that Spotsylvania is my home now. I was born in Ohio, born right up in Bethesda, Maryland, at the Navy Hospital. So this is home to me, and I've been in law enforcement, was in the military with the 82nd Airborne Division. So everybody in my generation was told, you go to college to succeed, right? So my freshman year, I actually had the sheriff of the county where my college was come in as a guest speaker. I was 19 years old, and my freshman year, and after the class, he said, hey, young man, I'm kind of impressed with how you carried yourself in class today. Would you like to get your summer internship out of the way and come work for me? And I thought, wow, that's a phenomenal thing. I did that, except he started me a little early. And my internship, because I started earlier in that school year, consisted of him putting me as an undercover agent within a vocational school within the county. So
it wasn't really something that you planned out. It just kind of happened.
No, I was actually thinking about being a land surveyor.
Wow.
So it was,
what a difference, huh?
And last minute I changed it because there was some scheduling with school. So I took a criminal justice class, and he was in it. And that's what happened. You're a broke college kid. He told me as well. He goes, hey, not only will I do that, but I'll pay you. And I'm like, that's phenomenal. So I grew up a kid in the projects back where I was from in Ohio. So having a paid job was phenomenal to me.
That's interesting that you wanted to be a land surveyor, because there really couldn't be that much bigger of a difference between land surveyor and law enforcement. Do you regret it?
Not a bit. Land surveying changed so much, and then I just fell in love with it while I was there. I just fell in love with the career. Did that for almost 4 years, and I had such an itch to get on the road. I kept asking the sheriff, can I stop doing undercover work? I was successful at it. We made several busts, several arrests within the school, changed the culture of the school.
Right.
And then, so I think I was 20, almost 21 by that time. So he sent me to a full academy. I went to the Ohio State Highway Patrol Academy. And the day I graduated, he handed me the keys. In those days, it wasn't much of an FTO program. He handed me keys to my cruiser, and off I went. I started working the road. And
now, speaking of sheriff and being a sheriff in a sheriff's office.
Sure.
So you did recently run for sheriff. So tell me a little bit about that.
I ran right here in Spotsylvania County in 2023. I ran against the incumbent guy, Roger Harris. He'd been in office, I think, 3 or 4 terms. By that point, I had seen some things through my career that were going on here in the county that I thought we needed a culture shift, a change.
Right.
And we needed it done by somebody who's not been polluted by the politics within that office.
Gotcha.
When I first got hired, the sheriff that hired me was probably one of the best men I'd ever met. He was a good man, and believe it or not, he was actually the sheriff, never spent a day in law enforcement in his life. So it was phenomenal to learn from his example.
That's great. So what do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions about law enforcement? So you said the guy you worked for, he's a great guy. That lightly implies that maybe other people didn't think that. So what do you think the biggest misconception is, especially about a sheriff himself or herself?
That we're human beings, first of all. I think people have this misperception that anyone in law enforcement is very robotic, right? Now, in training, there are some robotic things you must go through. But through my career, and one of the things I've always prided myself on, even with what I do today and prior, was help train and teach younger officers and as they're coming up about Fourth Amendment rights, searches and seizures, how to treat people like human beings. We're given an interaction, and people don't understand that most of the time, 87% of the time that we interact with somebody, they're going through an emotional crisis.
Right.
So we have to learn to be de-escalatory in our nature, not escalatory. And I think people were so used to that, and it may be my generation that caused that, but people were so used to that. Naturally, there's that immediate, and people see it through social media, that bumping of heads, and I know my rights, and I don't have to do this. And I'm trying to get across to young people and in the public that when you have an interaction with a law enforcement officer, now's not the time to try to prove who's got a bigger ego. So that's what I hope people will realize.
So when you were up and coming in college and you wanted to be a land surveyor, and then the sheriff gig pretty much happened upon you, for lack of a better way to put it, right?
It did.
What, if anything, changed your own perception of law enforcement through that process?
The guys I was working with, seeing the dedication. I worked with a small group of guys when I was doing the undercover drug work. Seeing the dedication, the hours they were putting in, and how much it meant to them, that they were out to make a difference within the community.
So why do you think these misconceptions exist?
I really believe it's today's era of social media.
Okay.
I think that people are more educated, but yet in our career field that I've chosen, we haven't chosen to educate ourselves enough to keep up, right? We're still conducting law enforcement the way it was done 50 years ago. Very few departments are willing to change. And what I mean by that is we've been proactive. 90% of the time we're proactive. We get a call, right? Everybody's used to 911, come help me. And you have a deputy or a police officer show up. Well, we need to be more, and there's a buzzword that's been around for 35 years. It's called community policing. But very few agencies actually do that and believe in that, or actually know what it means. So it's up to the leadership to go forward with that, so that it's up to us to help change that public perception. And it's up to the public to be receptive to that, right?
Very well put. Now let's segue into some decisions you have to make as law enforcement. So
Sure.
Decision making under pressure, and specifically these types of decisions that you have to make on the spot, on the fly, in real time. You can't armchair quarterback it, go back and look. Hindsight's 2020. We all know that. But you have to make a decision. Sometimes it's life and death. So what is the toughest thing about having to make a decision with incomplete information? So for example, if you're chasing down a suspect, that's all you know. You just got a call, you see something come over. So what makes that difficult?
Trusting the information that you get. So many times when we hear of something on the national news or in the news, something bad that's happened, it's because the officer, deputy involved didn't get the correct information or all the information to process and make good decisions, right? So training that, I believe that person sitting at that 911 desk, that communications desk, is so critical, because they're the first people that you deal with, right? And then as far as a judgment from a law enforcement perspective, the hardest thing that ever plays with me is the taking of one's liberty. We're given as law enforcement officers the most tremendous responsibility that our Constitution gives out. Even the President of the United States can't arrest someone, can't physically arrest someone. I, as a first-year rookie police officer, I could take your liberty. That's a tremendous responsibility to me, and I feel that that's one of the hardest judgments that I have to make on a daily basis.
So how does one go about developing that judgment?
Well, obviously training, knowing what the Constitution says about that, knowing what the Fourth Amendment means, Fifth Amendment, right? In those areas, feel that you have to have that as a human being as well. Not everyone's cut out to be a police officer. I feel field training time is very important for that. I feel we need to have better field training officers, because you get a person that's coming through his field time and he doesn't cut the mustard, you don't keep him just because you're so short on staff.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's a lot of departments today, because we're so short of bodies.
So you do think that it can be taught 100% or part way, or is it like require experience, a mixture of both? What's your opinion on being able to teach this?
I think it's a mixture of both. I don't think, not all the time, someone coming straight out of the military, I think that's a misconception. coming straight out of the military, someone automatically is set for a law enforcement career field, right? Transition for a lot of us in the military because we're coming from that structure and we think that's a structure there. But down to it and they start their job, they're finding out, well, wait a minute, I'm given a lot of leeway. I'm not having somebody hold my hand, tell me when to go do this, when to grab someone, when not to.
Right.
So that training is important, and having the ability and the intelligence to absorb that training and then apply it.
So what do you think the difference is between, let's say, rookie decision making and veteran decision making?
To not run in head first, right? When I was young and I was that brand new guy, learned a lot of hard lessons in that. First time you get your bar fight call, you want to be the first in there, and despite everybody telling you, hey, wait for your backup or wait for this, quite a few ripped uniforms to learn that lesson, right? Had my shirts ripped off me a few times. That was just being young and learning those things, and learning, badge doesn't make you 8 feet tall. That just gives you a responsibility to be the adult in the room, to help de-escalate the problem that's facing you at that point.
So how does experience tie into that for veterans as opposed to rookies? And training, thousands of guys in firearms training, law enforcement, military, civilians over the past 15 years. I've really seen that one thing can really trip people up, sometimes kill people, and that's complacency. So how do the veterans deal with complacency?
That is a question that's so hard. As far as, as a veteran, as a combat veteran, when I was in the 82nd, in law enforcement, I've seen everything and worked with children's services investigations to canine handler to on the SWAT team to detective. Just when you think I've seen it all, that's where the complacency kicks in, right? You have to have that mindset that today is going to be a new day. Doesn't matter what happened yesterday. And I try to live by that code. My past doesn't determine my future, so therefore my today is going to be different.
Now, is that something that you think is consciously thought, or do you think that's subconscious, or a mixture of both? In other words, you have to remind yourself, like, I really haven't seen it all. I really haven't done it all. Even though I've done this 1,000 times, this time could be different. Is that ingrained subconsciously, consciously? How does that play out in real time on the job?
I developed that over time. I don't think that's become a subconscious effort for me, because I've practiced it for several years, a lot of years. My upbringing had to do that because, again, I came from, as I mentioned earlier, when you come from the background that I did, not having money, not letting that determine that I can't make it in life, me through. But I found myself in my law enforcement career with just that thought. Had something tragic, lieutenant at the sheriff's department in Muskingum and Zanesville, Ohio, killed with his own duty weapon, found a door open to a garage, walked in, didn't wait on his backup, and I knew him very well. He was my lieutenant. I worked with him for years. Bear of a man. His name was Lieutenant Mike Lutz. God bless him. I'll see him again one day. His son is a current sheriff in Zanesville. I used to coach him in wrestling. I can't help but felt that he could go in and handle that situation through complacency, and it ended up costing him his life. So that particular scenario made me consciously have to deal with that. And when I start falling back into that, well, I've been there, done that, seen that, just a normal day, I have to tell myself today is never just a normal day. It's just another day.
Now, looking back on that situation, well, first of all, my condolences. And secondly, what did that teach you specifically, and how did that situation change the way you go about your job every day?
It definitely changed my attitude as far as what we just talked about. Right. Changed the way I go at everything in life, knowing that life is very short. Doesn't matter how long you've been on this ball of mud, right? Life is going to be very short. Taught me that big you think you are, there's always someone bigger. I think of that constantly. So it helped me prepare physically for life in this career field. I think it dictates to the professionalism that law enforcement public, right? If you look slovenly, your uniform's half undone, you got a food stain on, people's perception of what an officer looks like or a deputy looks like. So I changed my look, but Mike was that guy who was squared away, his tie was always perfect, his shoes were spit polished all the time. Is a big man, he was a large man, but there's always someone larger. So it just changed my outlook on life, helped prevent that from happening to others. I wanted his story to get out, so it didn't.
And how about as that relates to training for law enforcement specifically? So we did talk about how some decision making can be taught to a point, but has to be learned through experience and acquired wisdom over the years. Now, this lieutenant was obviously a veteran, obviously on the force for a while, so he had that already. So do you think that law enforcement can be or should be teaching anything else specifically to avoid a situation like this? Or do you believe, sitting here today, that that situation and others like it are just sometimes unavoidable and trouble finds you?
I think those things in our career field are unavoidable. But I personally decided when I first started, I remember as a brand new person, when that sheriff told me, hey, I'm going to give you a job, I actually took my weapon and I would dry fire that weapon hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Back in those days, we had 38 revolvers.
Right.
So I remember, for accuracy and to have a smooth trigger pull, I would put a nickel on the end of my barrel and I would pull back the hammer, I squeeze the trigger. The nickel fell off of it. Right? The old way of just learning that.
Exactly.
I can't count the hundreds of times throughout my career staying physically fit, right? Anymore at my age, but again, I try with what I do currently. Back in the U.S. Army with criminal investigations, I'm in the Executive Protection Branch, currently assigned to the Secretary of War's detail. So I try to keep myself physically fit. And I think that has a lot to do with it, because an athlete, I wrestled, I boxed, I know how exhausted you can get in 20 seconds of fights. And most fights, when you're fighting someone, they don't last more than 20, 30 seconds. But I got to tell you, that's pretty darn exhausting.
Yeah, to really play those out, especially the knife fights that last several minutes. And in real life, it's just not like that. It's very fast. Same with self-defense shooting encounters too, right? Rule of threes. It's over within 3 seconds, 3 shots, 3 feet. It's very close, very intimate. So looking at all this, let's kind of into the human behavior aspect of it.
Sure.
So obviously human behavior plays a major role here.
Yes.
All this. So when we talk about decision making under pressure and unfortunate incidents that happen to law enforcement and what we can do in training to improve training, a piece of this that is very heavily ingrained in human behavior and human development, and also the ego too, how people really mostly are in it for themselves, even if people tend to think, no, I'm very other people and I like to help other people. But really, when they help other people, are they doing it to make themselves feel better, or are they doing it because they really are a good person genuinely? Is it a mixture of both? And how does this segue into your law enforcement background with, I'm law enforcement, you're dealing with criminals, you're dealing with the public at large, like you said, community policing, right? So that's part of getting to know your community, right? But how does human behavior play into all this? And what do you think about, for example, let's talk about when you arrest someone. And the classic example is there's an 8-ball of cocaine in their pocket and they say, well, these aren't my pants. So I want to analyze.
Never heard that before.
I want to analyze that for a second from a law enforcement point of view. So do you feel slighted by that? Do you feel that, let me give you some examples, that your intelligence is being insulted? Do you feel like they're stupid? Because it would take someone very stupid to believe that. Because think about it. If we look at the levels of evidentiary sufficiency, I'm just no level of sufficiency that would really back that up, that those aren't my pants. Because there's so many things that would need to happen. First of all, the pants fit you, they're on you, and there's cocaine in the pants, and you're telling me they're not your pants. You just don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
So these people, they're telling you something that's clearly just, it's incredible. It's unbelievable. So how do you think of that? And then how do you personally deal with statements like that from people that you're arresting?
And you could take that to even more of a scenario where you find it in someone's car, right? It starts with a traffic stop, 2 or 3 people in the car. Now you got to try to factor whose is it, right? Which we run into on a daily basis. I tell you, in my experience and in education, because I not only in my career have just made an arrest or somebody in jail, but I have actually talked to these people at their level. So I will often, like if I got into a fight with a guy at work, I would ask him, hey, why'd you do that? Why did you feel that you needed to do that? Why did you feel the need to lie to me that obviously you knew? So yes, my immediate reaction as a human being is, come on, man, now you're insulting me, right?
Okay.
No. So I have to fight that back.
So you do feel that. You do
Absolutely.
feel like you really think I'm stupid. So we overcome that, and then what?
And you have to bury that deep, right? Because then I start to realize, well, they're doing this most of the time out of a position of fear. That fear is when I mention to you that, you know, things that we as law enforcement does that no one else does, is we're going to take your liberty. You're about to go into an 8x8 cell, 10x10 cell, and you don't know for how long, but you just know you're not going home tonight. That fear is so ingrained in them, they're willing. That ain't mine. No different than I hear in a domestic when someone says they cheated. Wasn't me. What, you know, that song wasn't me that we always heard from. Red-handed, but it wasn't me. It's that ingrained human nature fear that I've found. So from anything, not just in drugs, but when I ask people, what'd you run for me? Why did you fight me? Man, I was afraid I was going, number one, I thought I could get away with it because I didn't want to go to jail, right? So that fear, so I have in my career, and I've tried training others, that as an officer, you've got to realize that that's where most people are going to come from. So deal with them on that level.
So do you think you can tell when someone's lying then? Now, obviously this situation we just laid out, it's 2 + 2 is 4, right? Most likely, almost beyond a reasonable doubt, lying if they have pants on and the cocaine's in those pants and they're saying that those aren't my pants, it's not my cocaine, I don't know anything about it. It just doesn't make sense, right? So it's like me telling you, you know, right now, but I'm not really sitting here.
Right.
Yeah, I can see it though. So when we talk about other things though that aren't as obvious, do you think you can tell when someone's lying?
I have been able to, through the years, been able to do that. Comes to interrogations, interviews, that's a learned skill. I think most people, and in my experience, and I've been around a long time, and I want to tell the truth. Most people do, because they have an inherent in them, they just want to get it out of the way. Even people that the first thing out of their mouth was a lie, once they come out with the truth, you can kind of feel better for doing it. So most people do, but that fear has them locked up. It's a misconception that I have police officers tell me, well, I believe, or I've heard them testify in court, I knew they were lying because I saw their neck vein throbbing because their blood pressure was, well, that's because they were dealing with a cop, right? So not necessarily an indicator, what we call as an indicator. There's training in schools you can go to, stress, that tell you stress levels and deal with that. Ways to do that. I typically can just by it's questioning, getting somebody to talk to you and answer you back. Just physically looking at someone, it's a little more difficult. You have to have an engagement.
So it's about developing that rapport and then obviously establishing their baseline first. It's not really something you can do on the side of the street.
No.
And all these are really myths, you know, up until the light, the left or the right, or you look down or you pause or you fidget. I mean, just normal behaviors that people do. So you really have to establish the baseline first. Like you said, you have to develop that rapport.
Right? That's why they're called indicators. It's not one of them makes me think you lied. Maybe you are a little fidgety. Well, are you fidgety because you've got blue lights in your mirror, or are you fidgety because you're trying to hide something? You know, see you in the car, try to reach down or hide something. You know, again, just an indicator.
Exactly. So what are some, on the job in particular as law enforcement, what are some of the things behaviorally. So what are some behavioral patterns that you've experienced on a regular basis with people?
Most people, if you come across to someone and most of my approaches to people are just like a normal person. I don't come across to somebody of, hey, what are you doing? An immediate authoritarian voice. I see officers and deputies do that, and it causes that fear emotion, causes someone to shut down, or it's going to cause that fight or flight method, right? So having just an interaction and a friendly interaction and I'll just start asking questions at that point, right. Like you would if I just saw you and said, hey, how you doing? If we made eye contact, how you doing? How brings right. You by today?
So do you think that people are more predictable than they think?
I believe so. I think human nature has us as people, we are very predictable in what we do. The work is walking down the sidewalk. They're trying to get from point A to point B. Right. There's usually not a C and D in between, right? So our indicators or habits, I believe the older we get, habits. And so observing, and we as officers, and I try to tell everyone, and I think it's just in life in general, to be a good human being. I think God gave us one mouth and two ears for a reason. We should listen twice as much as we're speaking, right? So, and when they're nervous, they have a tendency to do the opposite.
That is very true. And we hear it all the time, and I teach it. I know it, but I think we can all become better at it, right? We need to become better listeners. They always say, listen more, talk less. And sometimes it's also not even about what you're saying or what you're trying to convey. It's the way you do it. It's the way you go about it. It's the way you come off. And over the years, me personally, I've had to curtail my harshness and abrasiveness because I have an ENTJ personality. And I suppose you can say I used to kind of Trump, and I don't do that anymore. No. And you Trump, and he doesn't give a shit.
No.
He and just doesn't give a shit. No. And clearly he has several, probably dozen staff members saying, Donnie, don't post that. Don't say that, Donnie. And he does it anyway.
Or he'll do it in a way where he's like, now I got told not to do it.
Or he'll post side.
Sure.
And he just doesn't care. And I just realized at this point in my life, I'd be like that. He is much older, much more established in a different position, but I don't know. I don't think people really like that type of attitude. So we have to be cognizant of that. So when people talk about are people more predictable than they think, they probably are, because they think that they're varying so much in their communication habits or what they do, but really we're all creatures of habit, right? So
and with those habits over a long period and those new habits, right?
Exactly.
Which is what we talked about earlier.
Now, so let's segue in. Speaking of new habits, you mentioned, you're sheriff, and I think if the opportunity arises again, you'll possibly run again. So a little bit about leadership now.
Sure.
So one of the reasons that you cited at the beginning here of the podcast was, Spotsylvania County here, because I'm a resident of Spotsylvania County as well. We've kind of been regime, if you will, for what, 4 terms now? Yes. 3 or 4 terms, which is what?
15, 16
years. Mm-hmm. And I sheriff before him, his name is escaping me right now.
Howard Smith.
Yes. He actually is in control of the land right here for the hunting club.
Oh.
So we own this property, but their property's adjacent. That's the I was telling you about. They have a hunt club there too as well.
Okay.
But what we don't know is all the deer come here because the deer know that we don't hunt them here. They hunt them over there. So we got some nice buck over here.
Great habits they've developed, right?
So, that we have now for the sheriff.
Sure.
I think the public at large can clearly see that there are some issues and have been some ongoing issues with the sheriff's office. There's also been major changes too. So we have to understand that in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the CLEO, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, is not the sheriff. It's the Commonwealth's attorney. And the Commonwealth's attorney's changed. And typically the Commonwealth's attorney stays the Commonwealth's attorney for usually decades. That's just how it goes in most Virginia counties.
Right.
And Travis was there for 8. I think he was there for 2 terms, and now we have 9 in there.
Right.
So I both personally know them, and I've worked with them. They've worked with me as well. And I think that has something to do with it too, because we need to have cohesiveness between the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office and the Sheriff's Office. And right now, I think we have that. I think that Sheriff Harris and his team and Ryan in the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, I think from what I can see, they work well together. However, there are some issues within the Sheriff's Office. For example, close rates on criminal cases, on investigations. So for example, right now, we have the Akins case that's now come to light again in the press, right? So I was one of the lead private investigators on that case back in 2015, 2016, and 2017. And, now as everybody painted him as, James Branton, the ex-stepfather of Caitlin Akins, he is now in the Rappahannock Regional Jail awaiting trial on several charges relating to child endangerment and I believe some type of sexual abuse against Caitlin and the sister. And that's curious to me because...
But not disappearance or murder.
It's been over a decade, yeah. And as soon as they put his name out there, they immediately connected it to the Caitlin Akins disappearance. There was just a news article released by local news, and apparently just a couple weeks ago in court, Ryan fact in open court and circuit court that he thought Caitlin was dead, and that supposedly the Commonwealth Attorney's Office has evidence that Caitlin's dead. It's also curious to me because if you think she's dead, then file the charges. Who else to do that? So I understand being the Commonwealth's attorney, we need to look, well, just because I have probable cause, can I prove this beyond a reasonable doubt? So that also begs the question, can James get a fair trial in Spotsylvania? I don't know, but he's going to go on trial, and I believe it's 8 felonies right now, but you were right, Steve. It does not include murder. It does not include kidnapping, but the media is portraying it. And it seems to be that the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office is basically trying to imply very strongly that they think that Caitlin's dead and that he has something to do with it. Now, that is just one piece that I'm intimately familiar with because I worked the case. But as far as your run for sheriff and cases like this and the communication that must take place between the Sheriff's Office and the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, what would you do? How would you do it? And maybe what would you do different? So let's say you run for sheriff and you are elected. So what changes would you implement?
Well, I have a take on a Commonwealth attorney in Virginia, prosecutor, for lack of a better term, right? In my career, whether you're a Commonwealth or you're a state, you're a prosecutor. You're prosecuting the cases that are given you by the law enforcement entity you're working with, right? The sheriff is ultimate when it comes to I'm going to make an arrest. Here's, to prosecute it, right? So obviously there has to be some cohesion there between the sheriff office and that prosecutorial. I'm putting more pressure on as both are elected officials, but as the sheriff, if I feel a case needs to be prosecuted, needs to be brought to prosecution, I think it takes a bit of pressure to say, we've gathered what we need. My jurisprudence on that particular thing is here's what you need from me. A lot of prosecution, a lot of state's attorneys are going to send things back. Those that don't have their own investigative will say, I need, because remember, they have to get elected too. So they want these high conviction rates, and a plea deal is a conviction. Yes. So they're pleading cases out, sometimes not to a victim's or victim family's favorite outcome, but they're pleading it out because it raises their conviction rate. Where at the sheriff's level, they can bury their closure rates. Well, we didn't really close a lot of cases. In fact, in our county, we're not good at closing cases. We're good at clearing them. But the difference of clearing a case and closing a case are two different things, right? So as a sheriff, I work hand in hand with our state's attorney, and I like Ryan. I know Ryan. He and I are very cordial. But you'll find that my style of leadership is going to be a little different. I'm holding accountability, and let's work together to make this happen. I don't want to hear we can't make it happen. Tell me what you need so we can.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So we talk about the leadership, especially in the investigative division. So in the detective division, okay. Specifically Pennsylvania County, what could you do to maybe better the close rate that they have? Because hand in hand with a detective in Spotsylvania on the Akins case. So we had our parallel cases.
Sure.
Right? I kept it private, they kept it public, but we would meet. And I remember him telling me one time, I'm this guy on the totem pole and I don't fart unless I have permission.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's problematic, or do you think that that's good, or do you think there needs to be a balance there? Because it seems like detectives don't have enough autonomy.
And that gets into leadership style.
Right.
Lead, and they develop other leaders. You can't develop a leader if all you're doing is Monday morning quarterback and corralling your people in and saying, you're going to do it this way, and that's the only way there is.
Right.
As a sheriff, I'm only bringing my experience and skill level to that set. There's road deputies that are going to have a complete skill set different than mine. And as a leader, in your military career, you knew there were privates that probably were better shots, they knew their stuff. You could entrust them to have your back. As a sheriff, I've got to entrust 500 employees that'll have my back, that are out there doing those things. And if you're a distrusting leader, you're the one that's Monday morning quarterbacking, you're not giving them the room and the autonomy to go do the job. That's my leadership style, is to give you that autonomy to go do what you need to do. I trusted you as a detective. I trust you to go make your case.
Right. So what do you think some leadership lessons are then? So especially for your potential role as the sheriff of Spotsylvania County. So not only what would you do different, but what are some lessons in leadership that you've learned that you could bring to the table?
Biggest thing I just talked about, letting people lead, giving them the ability, right? I can't say in law enforcement, a mistake, we're all going to make mistakes. But as you make a mistake, letting you know that as a sheriff, I'm going to give you the ability to learn from that mistake. If you've made a mistake, and it's such an egregious mistake, we can't get over it. I'm going to be very upfront about that, but I'm going to be know that I still have your back. But man, here's what we have to do, and lay it out for them. I want that to be open enough, and the leader that says, when you come to me, don't have that human instinct to lie because of fear, your fear for your job, your fear for your liberty. I want you to respect me enough to know that you can come to me with whatever it is, and we'll fix it. How that fix, what it looks like, determines what it is mistake you made. So, but know that I'm more the kind of leader that allows you to go out and do your job. I never Monday morning quarterback anyone. Also, know that you're as much a human being as the people we're dealing with to me. So
what about these mistakes, right?
Yeah.
The people, right?
Sure.
Wonder you make. What about people in your position? What about some common mistakes that leaders make? What are some of those, and how are we going to avoid them?
Very simple. Most at the sheriff level, right? Nature, right? The sheriff is a political beast because you get elected. I think that's a good thing. I think the sheriff needs to represent the people of the county, different than what being a chief of police is, right? Totally two different animals. But that fear of not being elected keeps that sheriff. Prime example, the nation is all abuzz about the kidnapping of the older lady in Arizona out west, who's on the NBC show. I'm not familiar, forgive me for the name, news. That sheriff had so much fear, not letting the FBI, not letting state come in and help him. He had so much fear of, I don't want anybody to come in and, so therefore I'm keeping them out.
Right.
To the detriment of the family, to the detriment of the case. So as that person, when I would make a mistake, it's no different for me that needs to be put out. That mistake needs to let people know, hey, look, I made a mistake when I did this. Here's what I learned from it. Here's what we're going to move forward. If the community is okay with that, they'll elect me for another term. If they don't, I won't get elected again. That's how we're held accountable. But you have to have that fear. And I've developed, as we talked about earlier, that's a fear that I've learned to dissuade from my personality a long time ago.
All right. So talking about the election, what did the campaign teach you about people?
Wow, that campaign was something else, but it taught me that people are willing to do anything to stay in a position of authority. Without the details, campaigning that particular office because of the authority that goes with it, from someone coming at it who's never run for office, who wants to do the right thing, and you see what people are willing to do to you both personally, and that there are going to be consequences. So again, just when you got complacent, and which I had fallen into that during that race of thinking, well, people are naturally going to tell the truth and naturally going to, because I ran on issues only. I had people coming to me, all these how to do things here. You need to make this personal. You need to bring out this personal aspect. I run on issues, and I thought running on issues is what the people wanted to hear. Maybe into that Trumpism, right? Because it's value to a lot of people. It's not my style.
Well, it is what the people want.
Yes.
But it's not what the leadership in the county wants.
Correct.
And, let's not do it. Like, they're going to fuck you over. They did try to fuck you over.
Yes.
And they have tried to fuck me over too.
Yes.
Okay? And that it will be done again.
No doubt.
Now, the question is, why are they trying to fuck over the opposition? That's really the question. Now, without making accusations, we'll just let the listeners think for themselves. Why would your opposition try to fuck you over? Not just talk shit about you, but actually try to take legal actions against you to campaign or to fuck you over. Why? Why would that?
Well, let's context in it, right? So in 2023, when I ran, there were some people who were supporting Roger Harris's campaign. One of the people after the campaign got fired. He was the number 2 at that sheriff's department. And he got fired, right? So he had brought in a coalition of some people who are currently, one is on the school board now, another one is a person's on the school board, but several people were brought together and sent an allegation to the Office of Special Counsel. As a federal employee, you have rules to operate from.
Exactly.
It's called the Office Special OSC.
So why? The actual point of that?
Benefit, right? So in any investigation I've ever done, and when I look at someone's why they do something, the 3 people are back, I look at what do they have to gain. So what does the Office of Sheriff bring here? Number one, that is the ultimate investigator of crime in this county. If there's crimes being committed, if that sheriff doesn't want those crimes to come out, they don't come out.
It is absolutely the responsibility
of
that.
So if there's corruption of county offices or state offices being conducted within the county, that position can buy you a lot.
And of course, we're not saying there is.
No.
We're saying that the listeners need to think for themselves and really take a step back and look what's going on here with the county as a whole. So just give me your final thoughts on the whole campaign, and then we're going to close it out.
Absolutely. So yourself, I would be more educated. I people every day who call me, who didn't support me in 2023, but now are saying, hey, I saw, sorry it was a little late, but now you've got my support. Sorry, I'm got my support. So this campaign has become and there are already people running for that office. There are already people announcing they're going to run because the current guy I ran against in 23, Roger Harris, has done. He said, I'm not, it's going to be an open seat.
He's not going to be running. It's going to be someone else. It could be 2, 3, 4-way race. Who
10-way race.
But it won't be Sheriff Harris anymore. He will not be running again.
No. He made that public.
So in 2020, is 2028?
27.
27.
It's months of early vote starts.
2028 is when the new sheriff will take office, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so where I know we have listeners all over the country, but in Spotsylvania County, Virginia, we will have a new sheriff in 2028.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and hopefully he's sitting right here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And all I'm asking for people to do is do your research and know that I'm the only candidate that's asking to earn a vote. And in my lifetime, even when I've dealt with people, I've asked them, allow me to earn your trust. Right. You don't have to give me anything. I'm not asking you to give me anything. I didn't have people give me handouts. I went out and earned my money. I went out and earned the thing. I did what you did. I started my own investigation security company.
Exactly.
Myself grew that to 160 employees throughout after 10 years and just earned everything that I've done in my life. And that's what I'm going to do with that sheriff's department. I'm going to earn that seat.
And then just a couple rapid fire questions to close this out. So
Sure.
if you were to give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Listen as much as you speak.
Awesome. Couldn't be stated better, right?
Yeah.
And then how about so far, your life's biggest lesson? What has life taught you?
Trust, but
Okay. Very good. One book everyone should read.
How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale
That's a
Carnegie.
good one. And one thing people worry too much about.
They're
Okay. Very good. And if people remember one thing from today's podcast, what do you hope it is?
you recognize Steve Maxwell as a human being, not the robot, the things that I've done in my lifetime, and understand Spotsylvania, Virginia is my home. I don't care, where you live. Spotsylvania has become this conglomerate of all of us federal employees or people that have moved here. And when I left, sold my business in Ohio, I could have moved anywhere in the country. I had the ability to move. I've been blessed in my lifetime. I've worked hard, but I've earned those blessings. But I was blessed with the ability. I could have moved anywhere I wanted to, and I chose Spotsylvania, Virginia to make it my home.
Awesome. All right, everybody. So that's going to wrap up today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it again. This is Steve Maxwell. I'm Alex Gemma, your host.